Hello and welcome to another session of Mindful Data Mine. In today's session, we will be discussing about how we can work with arrays in SAS. So basically, we use arrays in SAS whenever we want to perform similar kind of operation on multiple variables. When I say variables, I'm talking about columns. So without wasting any further time, let's start with the practicals. So for this particular session, I'll be using an example in which I'll have students' data. Okay, maybe I'll have student name and he studies physics, chemistry, and maths. Okay, an assignment has been given to the students. Name is A, B, and C. Okay, and the total number of marks from which they should get the marks is 100. There are few optional questions as well, and few of the students has attempted that. Okay, and the marks right now are something like this: 85, 105, 103. Then we have 105 and 98, 100. Then we have 120, okay, 78 and 65. Okay, so these are my three students. They are getting number greater than 100 because they have attempted optional questions as well, because of which when the sum is calculated it is coming more than 100. Okay, now this is my data set. I'll run this first and see the results. Okay, so we got the data set A with 4 columns and 3 rows. Now our task is, in case if any student gets marks greater than 100, for example in this case, then for all these students what we need to do is we need to adjust or change the marks to 100. Okay, so what we can do is there are two ways. Either we go by each variable and then set marks to 100, or we can use arrays. So for this particular session we will use arrays. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll create a new dataset B in which I'll use dataset A. Now I'll write array arr 3 because we have three variables on which we want to work. Okay, and then I'll write PCM. In case if I do not want to mention 3, I can write it like this, asterisk. So SAS at the backend will read this as 3 because there are three variables. Next is, now we have created an array ARR, okay, which will hold data from PCM. Now what we'll have to do is we need to iterate for each column. Okay, for this I'll run a loop I equals to 1, 2, 3. Or in case if we are not aware how many columns are there, we can use dim ARR. So whatever the value will be there in array, for example in this case it's 3, we will get 3 here. Okay, and now what we'll do is we'll write our condition if ARR I, because I will be first here and first is P, is greater than 100, then ARR I equals to 100. This is what we want to do. Okay, now let's run this and see the results. See, we are getting the marks as 100 where we have marks greater than 100. Okay, for student A, we have marks as 105 and 103 for chemistry and math. We are getting 100. For student B, We have 105 for physics. We are getting it as 100 now. And for student C, for physics, we are getting 100 now. Okay, so this is one way of doing or using array. Okay, apart from this, let's assume that again we have a data set C. Okay, and I'll use the same data. This time I have the students and they have shared their weight result. Okay, so they calculated their weight, they checked their weight 3 times. Okay, and their weight is coming like this. For student A, first time he checked it was 85, second time it was 105, third time it was 103. Okay, for student B, it was 105, 98 and 100. Similarly, for student C, it's 120, 78, 65. Okay, and we have been asked, okay, there is some error in the weight. So whatever the weight is, what we need to do is, if weight is greater than 100 in W1, then multiply it by 1.01. If it is in W2, then multiply by 1.02, and in W3, then multiply it by 1.1. This is what we have been asked to do. Okay, now again there are two ways. Either we can go by variable or we can use arrays here. Now what we can do is we can use the same dataset C and create a new dataset D. Here what we'll do is we'll create array. Okay, arr1 this time, and what I'll do is I'll write w1 to w3. Now for this particular example, if you see, we are not aware how many columns are in between w1 and w3. So here this asterisk comes into handy. Suppose there are w1 to 300 like this. Okay, and few of the weights are missing. Let's say w10, 20, 30 are missing. So eventually it won't be 300, right? It would be less than 300. So for all such cases, asterisk comes into handy. Okay, now again, I'll create a new array, arr2. Okay, and this I'll have maybe correction 1, correction 2, and correction 3. And my weights are 1.01, comma 1.02, comma 1.1. So C1 corresponds to 1.01, C2 1.02, and C3 is for 1.1. Okay, now again I'll run the loop 1, 2, 3 and run, and here we need to write the condition as if arr1 of I is greater than 100, then what we need to do, arr1 I equals to, we need to multiply weight 1 with C1, weight 2 with C2, and weight 3 with C3. So we need to write it again as arr1 into arr2 I. So here I will become 1 first, and arr1 corresponds to w1. So we will have w1 here. Then again for arr1 it will be w1 into C1 because this is the first value. When I becomes 2, then we will get W2 here, W2 into C2 like this. Okay, now let's run this and see the results. So when we run this, we are getting W1. If you see here, we are getting 104.03. For W2, we are getting 107.1. And here we are getting 121. Okay, now there is a problem. With this, we are getting C1, C2, C3, and I, of course. Okay, one way is to drop C1, C2, C3, and I in the end. Okay, or in case, what we can do is we can create a temporary array. How we can do it? Let's see. Okay, I'll copy the same code, and here instead of C1, C2, C3, what I'll do is I'll write underscore temporary underscore. Okay, now SAS at the backend will create temporary variables for these three values, and once everything is completed, SAS will dispose of the temporary variables. Okay, let's run this and see the results. So we got this error. It says too many array subscript specified for array ARR2. The reason for this is we have used asterisk. Okay, since we have used temporary, then in that case we need to specify 3. And here, in case if we want, we can also use curly braces to declare an array. So now if I'll run it, I'll get the same results, but this time I won't get C1, C2, C3. So this is how we can work with arrays in SAS. Please let me know in comments if you have any queries or question related to how we can work with arrays. I'll see you in the next session. Thank you.